You wake up, hit snooze, and complain about going to work. Now imagine waking up not knowing if you'll survive the day. No heating, no medicine, no grocery store. Just you, a sharpened rock, and a world that is actively trying to kill you. For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors did things to survive that would land you in prison today or in a psychiatric ward. They ate things you wouldn't feed your worst enemy. They made choices no human should ever have to make. And the craziest part? Every single one of them succeeded. Because if even one of them had failed, you wouldn't be here watching this. These are the 10 most brutal things ancient humans did just to see the sun rise again. And number 1 is the reason the human race still exists. Let's start with number 10. Number 10. The survival hacks that sound completely insane but actually worked. Ancient humans had no doctors, no tools, no instructions. So they experimented. And some of their tricks were genius. Got a headache? They chewed on willow bark, which contains the exact same chemical we now call aspirin. Got a deep, infected wound? They packed it with maggots. Sounds disgusting, but the maggots eat only the dead, rotting flesh and leave the healthy tissue behind. Modern hospitals still use this today. Thirsty in the wild? They followed bees to find water and followed birds to find fruit. They watched what animals ate and copied them, because if it didn't kill the animal, it probably wouldn't kill them. No manual, no teacher. Just pure trial, error, and a lot of dead relatives who got it wrong first. Number 9. Surviving disease with absolutely nothing. Today, a small cut is annoying. Back then, a small cut could be a death sentence. There were no antibiotics, no painkillers. A simple tooth infection could spread to your blood and kill you in days. A cold could turn into pneumonia with no way to stop it. So their bodies had to do all the work. The immune system was the only hospital they had. They used clay to draw out infections, moldy bread that accidentally contained natural penicillin, and dozens of plants they discovered by pure luck. And when none of that worked, they simply waited to see if you'd live or die. Roughly half of all children never even made it to age 5. Surviving disease wasn't about being treated. It was about being lucky enough to survive it. Number 8. Sleeping through the ice age without freezing to death. Picture trying to fall asleep when it's minus 30 degrees outside, with no blanket, no walls, no heater. Ancient humans had a brutal solution. They slept in a giant pile. Everyone crammed together, sharing body heat like penguins. The strongest slept on the cold outer edge. The children and elders got the warm center. They lined the floors of caves with animal furs and dry grass to keep the cold ground from stealing their heat. And someone always stayed awake to keep the fire alive, because if that fire went out during the night, some of them might not wake up. Sleep wasn't rest. Sleep was a team survival mission that happened every single night. Number 7. Surviving before they even controlled fire. We think of fire as basic, but there was a time when humans had none, and everything was worse. Food was eaten raw, which meant it was harder to chew, harder to digest, and packed with parasites. Nights were pitch black and terrifying because they couldn't see the predators circling in the dark. Without fire, they depended entirely on the sun for warmth. When it set, the world became a freezing, deadly place. They huddled in caves, completely blind, listening to the sounds of things hunting them. The day humans learned to control fire, everything changed. Warmth, protection, cooked food, light. Fire didn't just help us survive. It's the reason our brains grew big enough to build everything you see today. Number 6. Dealing with injuries with zero medicine. Break your leg today and you get a cast and some painkillers. Break your leg 20,000 years ago and you were in serious trouble. There were no surgeons. Bones were snapped back into place by hand with nothing to numb the pain and often healed crooked for the rest of your life. Healers and shamans used herbs, chants, and whatever plants seemed to work. And childbirth? Childbirth was the single most dangerous thing a young woman could do. With no doctors and no way to stop bleeding, a huge number of women died bringing the next generation into the world. Every scar they carried was proof of a battle they somehow won. Number 5. Why ancient humans supposedly died at 30, and why that's a lie. You've probably heard that ancient humans only lived to about 30 years old, but that number is completely misleading. Here's the truth. So many babies and young children died that it dragged the average way down. If half your children die before age 5, the average lifespan looks tiny, even if the adults lived long lives. The reality? If you survived childhood, you had a real shot at living to 60, 70, even older. Ancient humans weren't ancient at 30. There were plenty of gray-haired elders sitting around the fire, passing down the knowledge that kept everyone else alive. They didn't die young. They just had to survive being young first. Number 4, surviving predators when you were on the menu. Today, humans are the top of the food chain. Back then, you were lunch. Cave lions bigger than any lion alive today, giant hyenas that hunted in packs, bears that stood twice your height. To these animals, a soft, slow, clawless human was an easy meal. So humans got smart. They never traveled alone. They used fire to scare predators away. They screamed and banged rocks together in coordinated groups to seem bigger and louder than they were. They slept high up or deep in caves with only one entrance to defend. They couldn't outrun the predators. They couldn't outmuscle them. So they did the one thing they were best at. They outsmarted them. Together. Number 3, surviving winters brutal enough to wipe out entire tribes. Predators were scary, but winter was the real killer. It came every year and it showed no mercy. When the cold arrived, food vanished, plants died, animals migrated away or hibernated. A tribe that didn't prepare would simply starve before spring. So they planned for it all year. They fattened up during summer, storing every extra calorie as body fat. They dried and preserved meat. They sewed thick clothing from animal hides, stitched together with bone needles. Some dug shelters into the ground where the earth itself protected them from the wind. Winter didn't just test their strength, it tested their intelligence, their planning, and their patience. And the tribes that got it wrong didn't make it to spring. Number 2, the darkest thing they did when the food ran out. And this is where survival gets truly disturbing. When a long winter or a failed hunt left a tribe with nothing to eat, they faced impossible choices. They chewed on leather and boiled bones for any last scrap of nutrition. Sometimes the weakest and the oldest were left behind so the rest could keep moving. And in the most desperate cases, archaeologists have found the proof carved right into ancient human bones. Cut marks that show something we don't like to talk about. When starvation reached its limit, they ate their own dead. It wasn't evil. It wasn't a choice they wanted to make. It was the raw, horrifying math of survival. Some had to be lost so that the tribe and the human species could continue. And number 1, the most brutal survival job of all, keeping their children alive. Because none of this matters if the next generation dies. Mothers breastfed their children for 3, sometimes 4 years straight, which also worked as natural birth control, spacing out babies so each one had a fighting chance. Children were carried everywhere, never left alone for a second in a world full of predators. But here's the hardest part. In times of famine, when there wasn't enough food for everyone, parents sometimes had to make the most heartbreaking decision a human can make. Which child had the best chance to survive and which one didn't? It's brutal, it's unimaginable. But every single one of those impossible choices led, generation after generation, all the way down to you. So, the next time you complain about your alarm clock, a slow Wi-Fi connection, or a boring Monday, remember this. Your ancestors survived predators, starvation, disease, and the Ice Age itself with nothing but sharp rocks and each other. Every one of them won a battle you'll never have to fight. And that's the only reason you exist. If this blew your mind, you're going to love the next one, where we reveal the ancient human addictions that would shock your doctor. Tap the screen and let's keep going.